In this class we're going to talk about business performance management. We'll start by looking at strategic planning. Now, tasks common to the strategic planning and business process management process, the business performance management process I should say. Well, conduct a current situation analysis. That means look critically at the organization. Look at what it does, look at the processes it undertakes, look at its buying strategy, its marketing strategy, its HR, look at its performance in terms of profitability and the past records it has in terms of profitability, sales, market share and so on. So look at the current situation as far as possible and try to analyze where the business is. Try to determine also a planning horizon. How far should the plan run into the future? Should it be a 1 year or a 2 year or a 5 year plan? And we often read in management books about 5 year plans, although some in the business and even the social sciences area would say you can't really look that far into the future. Technology is changing so rapidly and there are so many factors to be taken into account as we move far into the future. So nonetheless, it's important to have strategic plans that have a certain planning horizon, that they stretch into some specific time in the future. It's also important to do an environmental scan. It relates to the current situation analysis, but the environmental scan would look at the market, but also look at wider factors, for example, government legislation, employment law, look at all of the factors that are coming, if you like, at the organization from outside, looking at the outside factors, the taxation, corporate taxation, schemes to improve transport or not to improve transport as the case may be. So looking at the whole environment in which the business operates and also taking into account its own commercial environment, the state of the market, the position its product has in the market, how long it's been there, what is the competitive environment, what innovations are there in the market. So try to get an overall picture, environmental picture of the state of the market, the factors, the financial and market factors that affect the business, as well as the wider political and social factors and cultural factors that are impinging on the business. And try to identify the critical success factors. Which ones are absolutely essential for the business to succeed? What factors must the business take into account? Try to identify them, try to see what is most important so that energy and focus can be delivered on those factors to try and improve the factors so as to improve the performance of the business. And also complete a gap analysis. A gap analysis is simply what is desired versus what is achieved, or what is likely to be achieved. So look at areas where there are doubts as to whether the company can achieve what it wants to achieve. Look at the gaps to see how the gaps can be filled. And create a strategic vision that management can follow, that the management understand what the company wants to achieve. The top management have set out a roadmap, if you like, where it wants to be in 3 years' time or 5 years' time or next year, whatever the time horizon is. They've set out a roadmap. They've set out where they want to be, and they've tried to identify issues on the way. And they've tried to identify the issues by looking at the critical factors that are likely to be encountered, the gaps that might be encountered in terms of their requirements, their expectations, and what will actually happen, and try to enable that vision to be adopted by management, including departmental heads, appropriate people from line management and so on. So there is a sense of direction. The organization is not drifting along, it is moving with a purpose. And develop the business strategy. The business strategy will incorporate many of the factors we've just talked about. And the business strategy will talk about how the business is going to achieve the outcomes it wants. How specifically will it deal with markets and competitors, new technologies, changing customer demands and requirements. Look at all the factors that need to be taken into account. And it's important to identify the strategic objectives and goals. It's important for the business itself to be clear about what it wants to achieve. Now, we have quite a long list here. We have 8 points relating to strategic planning. So what I'm going to do now is to run across these points in a little bit more detail. But it's not a very long class, so we'll get through them fairly fast. But just let's look at across these points in sequence again. So we're dealing here with strategic planning, and we'll look at some of the points. This one is the critical success factors. These are key factors that delineate the things that the organization must excel at to be successful in the market space. Now, it's important that the critical success factors are identified. Is the critical success factor research and development, product design? Is it the price? Is it customer satisfaction and delivery? Is it after sales service? What are the critical success factors? Try to identify these. Try to get some information about them. It may be customer surveys or some information fed back from the marketing section. But once they're identified, then the company can focus in on those and ensure good quality so that there is even more success in the market, that customers will be more content about purchasing the product. They'll be happier to deal with the company. They'll have confidence in the quality of the product, in its delivery, in its design, in its functionality, and so on. So these are important. The strategic vision, well, this is a picture, or if you like, a mental image of what the organization should look like in the future. The strategic vision is, as I said earlier, it's like this roadmap that's going to get the company from where it is to where it wants to be. But it'll also enable the management to envisage, to imagine what the company will be like in the future, when the time horizon has come and gone, when the time horizon has been reached. The management can imagine what the company will be like, so that they're driven to try and achieve the image in their minds, the ideas in their minds about the company. So it's the strategic vision. It's what motivates the personnel to try and achieve what's been set out in the strategic plan. Strategic planning, well, the strategic objective, that's a broad statement or general course of action prescribing targeted directions for the organization. It's telling the organization which way to move. It's identifying the course of action. It's identifying where the company wants to be. It identifies the course of action to get there, and it prescribes the direction. It tells the company to move in this direction as opposed to that one. It tells it to deploy the following resources, to put effort in the following areas. It is the strategic objective. It's to try and to meet the objectives of the company, the plans of the company, the plans that the company has set out in its strategic thinking. The strategic goal, well, normally it's a quantified objective with a designated time period. Quantified objectives tend to be more motivating. If the company says it wants to grow by 10% over the next 3 years, that's quantified, and that can be measured. So it's setting out an objective, and the management and the workers know what is required of them. Of course, it should be a realistic objective, and the timescale should be realistic as well. But if it's achievable, then it's quantified and it can be measured, and the success or failure of the objective or of the strategic goal can be measured and stated also. The strategy gap I mentioned earlier. Well, 4 sources for the gap between strategy and execution. There are 4 possible sources for this gap. First of all, division. The division may be quite elaborate. The company may specify quite elaborate objectives and quite an elaborate program for itself over the coming, let's say, 3 years. But the execution may be a lot different. It may not have the resources, or the workers may not have the skills or the aptitudes to achieve this vision. So there's going to be a gap. So the vision should be realistic. It should look at the organization as it is now and be realistic about what it wants in the future. Don't set the impossible, because it won't be achieved. And likewise, don't undersell. Don't set an objective which is easily achievable. It should stretch the company, but it should be achievable. And that's important, so that the gap can be filled. It's a realistic requirement, a realistic request to the workers and to the management to fill the gap. That there is the strategy and the execution coincide. They meet. There's also a possibility of a gap on the people side. It's important that people's understanding, the workers' understanding of the strategy is coherent. They should all understand the strategy in the same way. Otherwise they'll start to work in different directions, and they'll start to pull against each other. So it's important that there's a unified concept of the strategy. But also, again, that the strategy is achievable, and that the workers feel that by applying themselves consistently to achieving the strategy, then it can be done. If they feel it can't be done, then it's hopeless, and they will not even try. They've been asked the impossible. So it's important that the people, the personnel of the business, the senior management, the middle management, the line management, the workers, all of them should feel that what has been asked of them is achievable. Otherwise, there's a gap, and perhaps the gap won't be filled. Management. Management are responsible for implementing the strategic plan. The senior management develop the strategic plan. It's up to middle management to maneuver, if you like, the company into positions where it can achieve the strategic plans. It's the management who will deal with the operational day-to-day planning of the business and production, output, distribution, quality, all of the issues that are important. The marketing personnel will deal with information, dealing with the market, assessing the market, looking at customer needs, satisfying customer needs, bringing back recommendations for product development, and so on. But if they feel, again, that the gap is too big between what is set out in the strategy and what they can achieve, they're going to feel demotivated. And some of them may want to move, to leave the company. Some will feel stressed because of the requirement is too much. There's too much pressure on them to achieve what is an extremely difficult task. Or some may just content themselves with doing what they can and waiting to see what the consequences are. Management is important, and management skills should be updated. Good lines of communication between senior management and middle management should be open, and there should be regular contact between the two. Information should flow freely between the two of them, and the senior management in setting the strategic plans should bear in mind the capacity of the management and the capacity of the workers to deliver what is required, given the overall resources of the business. Talking of resources, there is also a potential gap that if the strategy is very elaborate and complex and demanding and resources simply don't exist, then the old adage, we can't take blood from a stone. Well, we can't take blood from the stone. The resources are not there, then it's impossible to achieve the strategic plan. There has to be enough capital, enough floor space, enough machinery if it's a production item. There has to be store backup, and the personnel have to be adequately trained, and the logistical system has to be in place, and so there are many requirements in terms of resources. If it's a service-based industry, people with the right skills and aptitudes, coupled with the right equipment, perhaps computer equipment, with the right software, with the right training programs for the personnel who will keep them up to date with the latest thinking and the latest technologies. These resources have to be in place. Otherwise, the senior management who set the strategic plans are again asking for quite impossible outcomes because the resources are not in place. There will be a gap. Operational planning. Well, the operational plan, this is the plan that translates the organization's strategic objectives and goals into a set of well-defined tactics and initiatives, resource requirements and expected results. So the operational plan is what translates the strategic plan. If you like, the strategic plan may be viewed as aspirational. This is what they would like to see. The operational plan is transferring that information into output, into something which the market wants. It translates the plans through a production process, converting inputs into outputs and doing so efficiently. So the operational plan takes the strategic plan as, if you like, the starting point, and then has its own plan. Its own plan is to deliver the strategic plan. That's its task. But then it must do so with good quality, with efficiency. It must ensure workers' welfare. It must ensure efficiency. It has strategies to do it. It may use a just-in-time or a lean strategy, or it has some sort of rules and regulations as to how the production should take place and the design of the shop floor. And if it's a service-based one, the departmental director or the departmental manager must understand the skills and aptitudes of its workers and make sure that they've got the right equipment, the right perhaps computers or whatever they're using to complete the tasks. So the operational is, in a sense, moving the strategic plan from aspirational into practice. It's making the product or delivering the service. The operational planning can be tactic-centric. Tactic-centric. So there could be a tactic-centric plan. Tactics are established to meet the objectives and targets established in the strategic plan. And this is used by best practice organizations. The tactic-centric plan is to look at the tactics that are established to meet the objectives, So it takes the strategic plans, sets out its tactics. How is it going to do this? How is it going to meet the requirements of the strategic plan? What does it need? What resources does it need? How should it be planned? It's developing its tactics, and then it implements the tactics to try and achieve the strategic plan. So it's tactic centric. It's based on tactics. It could be budget centric. A financial plan or budget is established that sums to the targeted financial values. So it could be senior management hand down a budget to the operational level and say, work within this budget. It's a possible route for operational planning. So departmental heads must work within that. They can spend up to that limit. If they go over, they're overspent on the budget and they need to account for it. If they're underspent, well, the assumptions of the budgeting process would have to be looked at. Financial planning and budgeting. Well, the allocation of an organization's tangible and intangible assets must be looked at. Looking at how the assets of the organization are used. The tangible ones would be the buildings, the machines, the equipment, the office, furniture, and so on. Looking at how these are allocated. And looking at the intangible assets, the people, the skills, the information that the company has acquired about the market and about its customers. All intangible assets. So the financial planning and budgeting process must also look at the resource allocations and how they should be assigned against the organization's strategic objectives and tactics in order to achieve strategic success. So it should look at how resources are deployed within the organization to try and meet the strategic success of the business. So the planning process, the financial planning and budgeting process, should take this into account. It should start with the strategic plans, see what the strategic plans require, and try to draw up budgets that will allocate the existing resources, the resources that are available, to try and meet the requirements of the plans, the strategic plans. Not an easy task. And as I said, even just working out the assets of the business may be quite tricky because the intangible assets may be difficult to quantify. They're intangible. The goodwill of the business, its position in the market, its history in the market, its consumer base. It may be difficult to quantify these for financial planning and budgeting purposes. But nonetheless, the company has to work to something. So it may have to devise financial planning procedures and budgeting, making the best estimates it can on the assets, the tangible and intangible assets, and also on looking at how to use whatever resources it can identify and use those resources to try and meet the strategic objectives of the business by devising strategic objectives and tactics to use the resources tactically, efficiently, to meet the requirements of the plan. So we can see there's quite a bit to the planning process. We can see how it's set out, the types of plans, the strategic plan, the operational plan. The strategic plan is the one which sets out the vision for the business, where the business will be in 5 years, 10 years, 3 years, whatever time. It should motivate the management to try and achieve it. The operational is how it's actually going to do it, how it's going to meet the requirements in terms of the resource package that the managers have got. So it's necessary to have planning, to have a vision for the business, otherwise the business is drifting. But it's also important that the plans are realistic and achievable. That's all I'm going to deal with in this session, so I'm going to leave this topic and say thank you for watching.